All right, back with another tier rankings here. I am doing every team's number one wide receiver, ranking them into tiers. And we'll start off with the Tennessee Titans, who, first off, who is their number one wide receiver? There's going to be some debate as to which guy I even pick on certain teams. I think for Titans, I kind of have to go Treylon Burks, I guess. I think that he is probably their guy they're hoping can be a number one wide receiver. I thought he showed flashes as a rookie, but again, under 400 snaps. I do think I'm going to go D tier to start off. Starting off on a low note with the Titans, I think he could step up and be a pretty, solid receiver, but I don't really feel like they have anyone who I feel comfortable saying, oh yeah, that guy is a number one wide receiver right off the bat. But then we go to Tyreek Hill with the Dolphins, who, that's S tier, and they have two number one wide receivers, but we're just talking about their best wide receiver. I think S tier feels appropriate for Tyreek Hill. He's very good. The Jets, I think Garrett Wilson has to be the guy for their number one wide receiver, who was really good last year. I think he was a true number one wide receiver, so I'm going to give him like B tier. To me, B tier is going to be, I feel like that's kind of the guys who I'm like, yeah, you're a number one wide receiver. I feel good about it, but I don't know if I necessarily feel like you're, elite either. At least not yet. Maybe Garrett Wilson can become that later on in his career. Jamar Chase, I am going to put in S tier. I think Jamar Chase is great. A guy who I trust to win on the outside consistently. Definitely S tier. For the Browns, that would be Amari Cooper, who I think another B tier feels in order for Amari Cooper. I think some people might put him higher. He did have a good year in Cleveland, doesn't get the attention that you get when you have a good year in Dallas, but I think you could argue he had one of his better years actually last year in Cleveland. He was great last year and lived up to the contract that was, big enough that the Cowboys felt they had to get rid of him. So yeah, B tier. I think for Calvin Ridley, I'm going to continue to continue this trend of B tier. I feel like Calvin Ridley, another guy who you just trust on the outside. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be my pick for the Lions, who he's a number one receiver because he's their best receiver. He doesn't typically play on the outside. He does it in a different way, but he's great. I mean, I think I'm going to put him in A tier just because of the way that he plays. You could talk me into S tier with him as well. I kind of want to see it for another year, though. I think that's what's mostly holding me back. Give me another year of Amon-Ra St. Brown playing at an elite level, and I'll put him in the S tier. Justin Jefferson, that's S tier as well. Debatably the best wide receiver in football. That's going to get you an S tier. And for Tampa Bay, I'm going Mike Evans. You could argue Chris Godwin, but I'll go Mike Evans. And I'll go A tier. I don't know if he's quite on the level of those other top guys at this point in his career, at least. Again, we'll see without Tom Brady. Do his bulk stats start to go up again? But we've still seen that, he's a guy who you just have to double team. Because if you don't, ask Carolina in week 17 how that went, not double teaming him. You got to put a second guy on him. The Niners are interesting. I guess you could argue Ayuk or you could argue Deebo Samuel. If I was including tight ends, you could then also argue, Kittle, but I'm not. So I think Deebo Samuel will be my pick, and I think it's another A tier. I think Deebo Samuel gets all the credit for being someone who's a unique player who plays halfback and wide receiver. Maybe doesn't get enough credit for how good of a wide receiver he just actually is, and how good of a running back he is. He doesn't just do both, he is great at both. We also have the Falcons. I'm going Drake London, who, I don't know, feels like the Garrett Wilson situation kind of applies to him as well. Really good rookie year. We'll see how he can continue to go. And then for the Ravens are another team where it's like, okay, Odell is fascinating. Odell is the guy who I think you have to pick as their number one receiver. Coming off of the injury, what are we going to get from Odell? And because of that, I am going to put it in C tier because there is that risk factor. That's just kind of how I view it. The Bears, I think DJ Moore is good. I like DJ Moore. I think I'm going to put him in B tier as well. I think that feels right for me. I think that he's someone who is a very good player, but is he the top of the list. Maybe you could argue he could be an A tier, but I don't know. I feel like I've always kind of maybe been a bit lower on Moore than some other people. I still think he's very good, though. He's at least B tier. We didn't have CeeDee Lamb, who, again, maybe I'm just going to put everyone in B tier. I don't know. Feels like another B tier guy, though, to me. Again, a guy who's a number one receiver. You don't even question it. But is he like a great number one receiver? Is he an elite number one wide receiver? I don't necessarily think so. Then we have the Houston Texans, who first we got to figure out who are we putting as their number one wide receiver. Is it John Mechie, who apparently should be able to play? That could be fun. It might be. I might put him there because you've got Nico Collins as your other guys. Nathaniel Dell, who they drafted. Robert Woods. I don't know who I'm exactly putting. I am putting it in D tier though. I think that's kind of obvious. Next up, we have the Colts, who are another team that's like, okay, who is your number one receiver, I guess? I mean, I don't know. Michael Pittman's their number one receiver. That's who it is. Alec Pierce showed some flashes. Maybe you could try to talk into Alec Pierce, but no. Michael Pittman is their receiver, the number one receiver. I take that back. I don't know if I quite put him on the level of like a Calvin Ridley and a DJ Moore and a CeeDee Lamb. I think I have him a little bit below that. I think he has had games where he's been on that level or better than that level, but I don't know if he's done it consistently enough. Still a very good option, and I'm not mad at it. You know, that's kind of the C tier is like it's not bad, but maybe I would like you better. I'd feel a little bit more comfortable if you were a number 2 than a number 1 is kind of where I'm at the C tier, but still a very valuable asset and a good number 2 option. The Rams, I'm a little conflicted on the Rams, to be honest, of should I put them in should I put Cooper Kupp in S tier or A tier? Because again, I think you could argue, you can't even argue it. He's been an S tier quarterback before. He has. That is just something that is true. But can he, we've only really seen it for 1 year. So I'm going to dock him for that. I'm going to put him in 8 tier. Still very good. But hey, I don't just hand out S tiers, right? You gotta earn it. Keenan Allen, another guy who I think is very good. I am going to put in B tier as well. Had some injuries. That's kind of the main reason why I have him there. Devontae Adams is S tier for sure. That's obvious. One of the best receivers in football. Terry McLaurin, I feel like is A tier. I do think that he is one of the real, again, the thing about receivers, and people get so upset because, your favorite player on your team is almost always a wide receiver, right? Because when they get attention, it's a good thing. Every time their name is called, usually, unless it's, pass to Terry McLaurin is intercepted, usually when their name is called, it's because, what a catch from Terry McLaurin. Or even like, pass is caught for 8 yards by Terry McLaurin. It's always good stuff. So, the running joke Kyle and I have on the podcast is there's, 30 top 10 receivers in football. You gotta, not every receiver is underrated. Everyone thinks their favorite receiver is underrated. Terry McLaurin is underrated. Really good player. I have him in A tier. And then the Chiefs. The Chiefs are a very fascinating one because I like the Chiefs' overall receiving core. And again, really Travis Kelce is their number 1 option. But who do you put as their number 1 receiver? Do you put it, I don't know, is Marquez Valdes-Scantling the guy in this scenario? What do you do? I don't feel great about really putting any of, is Kadarius Toney their number 1 receiver? I don't know who you even put in that role. I don't like their number 1 option that well. Again, I loved when it's not Travis Kelce, so I think it's D tier for me in terms of their number 1 receiver. That feels fair, I think. I don't think they have a guy who I think is even really a fringe number 1 guy. They don't need it, though, because of the way that they run their offense. So they're a unique scenario. They do things differently in Kansas City, but I'm going to say that they don't have a great number 1 receiver, but have like 17 guys who can come in and play, which is the good thing about them. The Saints, I think Chris Olave has to be the guy there for the Saints, and I think that he's good. I think I kind of have a tier for him already. The B tier feels right. I feel good about him being a number 1 receiver. Do I feel like he can take the next step and become an A tier or an S tier number 1 wide receiver? Sure. I think that that's possible, but I want to see it before I give it to him. Then for the Giants, this is one where, again, not a great option either way. I liked what Isaiah Hodgins did last year. You have Darius Slayton as well. I do think that kind of similar to the Chiefs, they're hoping that their tight end can be the number one receiver, Darren Waller, who they traded for. But I'm going to give Isaiah Hodgins the number one receiver honor here, although I still am going to put it in D tier. Again, D tier for me is just a guy who, like you see it, like shouldn't be your number one receiver. Valuable player for sure. There's not going to be a team that doesn't have any valuable receivers, but to me, that's where I have him. Then AJ Brown. You could argue he is S tier. I think, again, the sample size thing is going to have me hold off a little bit. I think A tier feels right for A.J. Brown. He's incredible, but, A tier is where I feel comfortable putting him. We then have the Steelers, who, again, I like the receiving core as a whole. You have Deontay Johnson, you have George Pickens, they added Allen Robinson, so it's a solid receiving core. Who's the number one guy? I think Deontay Johnson is the number one guy. Another one of those situations where I feel like Steelers fans love Deontay Johnson. They talk about Deontay Johnson as if he's a top 10 receiver in football. I really don't see it that way. I am going to put him in C tier. I'm sorry, Steelers fans. I think that I didn't think he had his best year last year. I thought he was better in 2021. I think he's a very good receiver, but again, he's in the C tier of similar to Michael Pittman. I feel like of guys I like, but I feel like I don't know if I love you as a number one guy, but I do love you as a number two guy, which, for him, with Pickens, who maybe could become that number one guy, that could be exactly where Johnson is at. So again, you can be a very good receiver and still be in C tier. Jerry Jeudy for the Broncos, I think I'm going to put him in the same boat of that C tier situation. I just don't know how much I like Jeudy, and he's shown flash. His highlights could be S tier caliber stuff, but I just have not seen it anywhere consistently enough for me to feel comfortable even putting him in B tier. Then the Packers. The Packers are interesting. Who is their number one receiver? I mean, the only guys, there's only two players on the roster, or actually there's three players on the roster who had snaps last year at the wide receiver position. It's Samori Toure, Romeo Doubs, and Christian Watson. So, not exactly a ton of depth here, but we're just talking about the best receiver, who I think I have to put Christian Watson as, and I think I'm going to put, he is the guy, and I'm going to put it in C tier for me. That feels the most appropriate, as he definitely has shown flashes, but I want to see it a little bit more consistently. Only had 503 snaps last year. I want to see more. The Panthers are here, the Carolina Panthers, who I guess DJ Chark is the guy I'm going to put as their number one receiver on this. You could argue Adam Thielen. I think there's a real lacking of number one receivers there. I am going to put it at D tier. Hopkins, that's A tier for me for the Cardinals. Hopkins, very good. Definitely a player who I like, but at the same time, just the injury stuff is a little bit concerning, which is why I'm going to hold off a little bit on all of that. Then we have Stephon Diggs for the Bills. That's another A tier for me. I think some people would argue S tier. He's been, I think, consistently A tier though for a while now. And DK Metcalf, I'm also going to put in A tier. I think he's a little bit above the he's not just the number one option. He's a good number one option, but is he an elite number one option? Maybe in certain games, but not every game is how I view it. And then the New England Patriots, who I'm trying to figure out who their number one option is, because Juju, Kendrick Bourne, Tyquan Thornton, Devontae Parker. Who do you put there? I guess I'll put Devontae Parker, but again, it's another one of those. Devontae Parker, he's a valuable player, but that's D tier for me. It is. So yeah. Those are my tier rankings of every team's number one receiver. What do you think of that? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.